Maybe you don't know much about games, but what I'm about to show you is gonna blow your mind. The art of game creation is just phenomenal. Here we have an example from Uncharted. Have you ever stopped to think about how games are made? People talk a lot about graphics engines and specific things, but this technique is honestly one of the most important when it comes to theme creation. I'm talking about blocking. And what I'll show you in this video will explain why Uncharted can go from this to this. I know the image quality isn't the best, but you'll see, it's phenomenal. In fact, I'm gonna use my own game as an example here. This scene looks like this now, but it used to look like this. See? Completely different, using this ancient game development technique. Like it, and stick around. But first, I have to tell you this. There's a really cool promotion going on for a world building pack. Because if you don't want to go through the whole process of creating the scene with blocking and all, maybe you're just starting out. Or maybe you know your project is further along and you're ready to make a 3D animation, a clip, or something like that. Or whatever you need it for, man. This pack is phenomenal. It's a bundle. In other words, it's a package of 3D items that's priced at an insane $5,000. But if you use my coupon in the description, it drops to 40 something dollars. Seriously? Seems that sell for $250, $150? You can get them with no catch on the official Leartes Studios website, which is a studio that creates high quality 3D items. And you can get it for a limited time. So check it out, it's in the description and the pinned comment. So how does Uncharted manage to create this kind of high quality environment? Like I said, with the blocking technique. Why it works, how it works, and what's the big secret behind putting random, nonsensical things like these white walls, why that works, and why it's important. The step you have to understand is that game creation is a multidisciplinary thing. What does that mean? It requires several disciplines, meaning several areas of knowledge. So there's the script guy, there's the guy who does another part, like the 3D animation, his movement there. There's another person who will handle the code, the programming. And all of this needs to move what? Together. You can't stop one to do another, then another. You have to keep it running. It can't be a linear progress. It has to be like random, you know? The reading and writing of this type of content, of what's being created. So while the guy's creating a wall for him to climb, and the animation, by the way, look, he does the T-pose there, which is used for game development, right? Because there's no animation of him rolling and falling yet. Pretty cool, right? While the guy's working on the animation, you need to test the flow, test how it's gonna be, and various other things. There are particles, there's audio, there's a zillion things happening. So blockout comes into play here. It allows you to run tests to see if the story works, what 3D item goes there, what its specific shape will be to fit that location, without stalling the project. If it weren't for the blockout technique and this parallel execution of things, game development would be many times longer, man. Right? It's obvious. And now, look, before you leave the video thinking you know everything about blockout, I'll show you in. Practice how this actually works, okay? Not from absolute zero to the end, but I'll show more than most people do. In fact, there's another example here. Look, it's from The Last of Us. Yes, this is The Last of Us with a blockout map. So instead of needing to have all the high quality trees ready, you have these trees here that are simpler. It's basically from a low poly game or PlayStation 1, and then you go in and replace them. Same for cars and various other things. And here we have a vast setting with a lot to think about. Imagine if we waited for everything to be ready to test it. It doesn't even make sense, right? The exploration here is extremely vast, but it's funny, right? For those who often have no contact with game development, looking at these things can seem surreal, like something from another world. It's unimaginable, but that's how it works. So how can we do this blockout execution part to later achieve a better result? Let me show you. It all starts, of course, inside 3D software. Actually, everything happens somewhat in parallel, as I said. But for blockout, you go to 3D software. And here in the 3D software, you have to create the base of the object, right? So let's say I wanted a table. Here's a table I created in a very simple way to occupy the 3D scene. And then you place things in the spots where they will later be replaced by something of higher quality. Here, I have this scene from my horror game, Faceless Residence. It's in the description for you to add to your wish list on Steam. And well, basically, I created each of the things that I would later replace with better quality. And what I did was, I came here, I can even use items from within Unreal Engine itself, but I prefer to do a rough version here in Maya. You can use Blender, there are several other industry softwares you can use. And then, wow, well, that's it. I create this object, then I go to File Export, and then I import it into Unreal Engine and place it here. Actually, this scene isn't 100% finished yet, okay? There are several other details I'll need to work on, but it's well underway. And it's really cool to see the scene going from blocking to this stage. And while this kind of thing is being done, I can do what? Keep testing my game, testing this part of the scene, seeing what works and what doesn't. And I actually need that to be possible, right? Imagine if I had to have this ready before I could test it. It doesn't work. So it's really cool, seriously. And here, guys, just to, show a little more of how I do this in creation, right? Game creation. Basically, here in any 3D object creator, actually, how can I put it? 3D software for creating of objects for modeling. I usually have objects that I can grab, so I bring them into the map. And from here, I start modeling, giving it a shape. So here I have a block, then I'll grab the face, Control E, and then I can extrude. Shrink the face a little or a lot, then hit Control E. Then it goes further up, and that's how I create my table. That's it, guys. It's really cool. Game creation. If you've never dealt with modeling, this is how it works. Then here I'll hit Control E, and there's a table. Oh, but I didn't like this topology. Fine, then you make some topology that's suitable for your project or your result, because the topology, the mesh surface, will often influence how the texturing will be and so on. Sometimes you won't want things that are unnecessary. Well, not sometimes, always, right? But sometimes you overdo it a bit, and then you need to change the topology. And that's how it works. Then you take this table. Oh, this won't be the final table. But sometimes it's close to the table you want it. So you just do it real quick, put it in there, and then okay, I finished this step. You go and do the blocking for another object. So look, you could stay here on this table for a while. A long time on it. No, but I want it like this. I want it like that. But then you go to gameplay, man. That table there that I spent so much time on, it didn't need to be very high. It had to be lower. Then you go back. So not that you won't go back in many cases, right? Because game creation is like that. But you need to spend the minimum amount of time, move on to the next one, have that thing there, have an environment already blocked out so you can see what works, what doesn't, the correct specification, if it'll be bigger, if it'll be smaller, to precisely manage to make the game work. And it's a job. It's a phenomenal art. It's a fantastic thing. I think it's really cool. I often get lost when I'm playing. I stop to keep looking at that 3D item, which is in a way that I know the work it took to make that. I look at it, I admire it. So it's really cool to discover how games are created, If you've read little or learned little about how games are created, you've just discovered the channel, man. Subscribe here. I've been bringing this type of video and many others that I'm sure you're gonna enjoy a lot, okay? Thank you so much for watching until the end. It was a quicker video, but it has a very powerful technique behind it, which is not replaceable. No, not replaceable. That you shouldn't underestimate. Because basically, everything goes through the blocking phase. Awesome. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. I'm out.